Hi, Joanna.
Hello, Ade.
It's great to be here. Today again, we're on the economy. Last week,
Yes.
not too many things to talk about, but very important things that we're going to be speaking about.
Yes.
Speaking about the exchange rate, power, we'll talk about PENCOM, the growth, and maybe we'll just, look at our neighbors in Ghana.
Yes. So there are elections.
Yes, so,
can we say they beat us at that?
well, they seem to have been beating us at every election. More peaceful. Even this year, they moved a step further. People were able to go around and they still voted, and we didn't hear of anything relating to intimidation or is one tribe or the other, and
Peaceful
that for me
election.
is great.
Our brothers in West Africa.
Yes, so they seem to be showing us the way since we've overtaken them on
Will
inflation.
we learn? Will we learn?
I hope we do.
But let's begin with, of course, the Naira. It was a wild week. And when we say wild, volatility, I mean, we recently had Cardoso pretty much come out to boast that the Naira had been stable for the past couple of months. And in 2025, we expect more stability in the Naira. And in 1 week, we saw that wild dance of the Naira, especially on the parallel market and a bit on the official market. What are your thoughts on it?
So let's start from the week before last, where the Naira seemed to be gaining so much strength, and the bulls were. Was it the bulls? Yeah, the bulls were in charge then. The new system had just come up. Access to the new system was a bit. It wasn't. There weren't so many complaints about being able to supply was high, so and especially on the official market. And usually when the official market starts to trend in one direction because of supply, what it then means, or demand, what it then means is that it starts to affect the parallel market. So I guess the week before last, those gains where we started seeing the MCBN also were inflowing. The market operators within the system were also putting in enough dollars to meet the demand. But last week, there was a sudden change. And one of the reasons I heard you speaking to Godre on Money Brief, and he explained a few things. And those were just the basics for you to better understand. The parallel market usually feeds a lot of the retail side.
Right.
And we should be expecting Naira to gain a bit more strength. This is December. People are coming in.
See, this year has been an outlier in so many regards.
Yes. And I guess that's why Cardoso was really confident that he would have enough into the system. But I don't think there is enough coming into the parallel market as quickly as it should. That's one. And then secondly, the ability to also access the new trading system. I know Ugo spoke about that.
Right.
Cost might be a factor. He mentioned that, he mentioned the platform being on Bloomberg. Subscription could be as high as $2,500 monthly.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. So if you extrapolate that into a year, that's almost $30,000 that you're asking the average man in the parallel market to deal with. Very informal, where news spreads like wildfire.
Right.
So I guess, like he says, CBN has continually said speculators are the ones that are pushing it up and down. And once they were able to get hold of that market, speculators were more like, oh, let's try and, But they just found out that if you don't have enough access from the retail side, where a lot of transactions going. So I'm just trying to imagine what will happen in January, because it's back to about 1.7 now. I'm just trying to imagine what will happen in January. When people are going back,
they want their dollars back.
They want dollar back. So demand is definitely CBN going to try and support that in the parallel market. School fees, and a number of things are going to happen in January.
This volatility that Cardoso is talking about, this stability of the Naira that Cardoso is talking about in 2025, how realistic, or is it just another daydream?
Well, we've seen the reserves continually grow. is almost hit 40 billion.
But the true amount that is Nigeria's.
Well, there are debts.
With all the payments.
With all the debts that are now being accrued, we have close to $100 billion in debt now. That's almost like 50-60% growth, if not more, or 100 and something percent growth. And we need to consider a lot of that, because once it gets back to times for payments for interest, just servicing those debts, are we going to borrow more to service them?
Yes.
And that's where the challenge is. But there must be some joker Cardoso has, and I think what they will probably be working on towards the end of this year, early next year, is to concretize the new trading system so that everybody can come in. Something tells me they would work with the retail end, because the president of the BDCs has also said that there's a need for them to get into that market easier, simpler, and that way it would push dollars coming in through them, through that system, and probably increase the supply in that system. So I think it's something they need to work on. That subscription might be too high. And let's also look at it. I know in Nigeria we're always, let's put a high subscription. I think they should consider that, so that those in that retail sites can actually subscribe cheaper. So they need to work out with those who own the platform. And then you look at the volume of people on that side who are going to be bringing in funds to trade. So it's a critical part.
So they should lower the bar for more access.
Oh, yes.
All
First
right.
and foremost, so that you know. And then when you do that, what then happens, in my own opinion, is you will get more people into the system. And then you will know those who can actually sustain the pace.
The people who are demanding dollars, do they want to demand it on record?
We must get to that point, back to that point where you demand dollars on record to make it more transparent. Are you with me? Then we better understand how much is being asked for, how much is going to be paid in terms of what's it called. And then that way it makes it easier for the CBN to manage the reserves. Are you with me?
Yes.
And not start to look for dollar loans that when you bring them in, first and foremost, yes, you're going to use them in Naira towards whatever projects that you're doing, but it's going to go through that market. So even if loans are coming in, it's specific amounts can be pushed in through that market. And you don't have to just get it all at once and use it to push down the exchange rate. And that's a critical part for it.
So, I mean, it's a new system and it's a laudable system.
Yeah, it is.
I'm sure they'll find their footing on how they can make it work best.
But they have to do that quickly. Otherwise, I'm scared it could get to as high as 1,800 in January.
2,000.
Maybe 2,000.
We've been saying this 2,000 since for quite a while now, but we haven't broken that ceiling.
And I guess each time we say the 2,000, what the CBN does is come out with something new that would help ease the system. But the good thing about it is that I think since March, April, we've had some level of stability, which is what we've always asked for.
On the official?
On both sides.
Okay.
It hasn't gone beyond 1.7. It hasn't gone below 1.6.
And that's because of CBN's interventions.
Whether it's CBN intervention or you get more dollars into the system, whether it's through the private market or the official market, but you've kept that stability. People could plan. Prices of goods coming in were not just... At the point in time, the custom window was sometimes there was a particular month, I can't remember when, every day. Yes,
I remember that month. Exactly. It was changing.
But now you can plan. There is a stable amount, there is a stable average that has been used over the last 3, 4, 5 months. But you don't want that to spiral out at the end of the year, because you just start the new year, chasing after things you shouldn't be chasing.
All right, so we'll see what happens, and of course, there's need for more transparency. That system is expected to bring in that transparency.
Yeah.
There have also been concerns that last week we didn't get any trading turnover figures that would have helped to,
To at least understand
yes.
what the demand and supply was. So let's see what goes on this week. I get, like I said, I guess they're trying to really monitor that system and understand what needs to be done from a policy perspective internally to get more people onto the system. And that's what the BDCs are asking for. For the retail side has to really play in that market, because I don't know the figures. I have no idea what the figures are because it's really informal, but you know that it's a huge part of that market.
All right, moving on from there, cash scarcity. Last week, the economy last week, cash scarcity was also an issue last week. What was your understanding on, what was going on?
I think it was a fear that it's another December and the Supreme Court judgment. But fortunately, during that bankers' dinner, Cardoso quickly laid that to rest.
Yes.
They've actually also come out to say that banks who are, trading in new currencies will be fined as high as 150 million naira in penalties. So at least that has put a lot of it to rest. Cash is a bit easier. But we continue to wonder although the cash in the economy dropped by, I think, 1 trillion from 108 to 107. Where's that money going to? And you also alluded to, those are part of the things that are also driving up the demand for dollars, because it's not going into the real sector. So people have to look for where to arbitrage and make some money.
Right. Another issue in the economy last week that touched everybody because fuel prices are high now. It's not as easy to run your gen when there's no light. Was
even solar prices have gone up.
Everything has gone up. Inflation, Pro Max. But yes, the national grid collapsed again for the 12th time this year.
On the 12th day of Christmas.
To kick off the 12th day of Christmas, Abby.
Yes.
And, who knows, we may still have room for another grid collapse this year.
No. We shouldn't have one.
Hopefully not. But it raises a lot of concerns. And obviously the conversation around the decentralization, right? It's becoming more intense. How can a whole country be dependent on just that national grid? So, what are your thoughts on this and having other mini grids and providing solutions to this, constant grid collapse?
Okay, so I think one of the good things that have happened is that a state like Lagos State has actually passed its own, its bill on the power sector and how it should work. So when it comes to mini grids and how you tie into the national grid, but I do still think that there is room for better management of the national grid, because the national grid connects all the states.
Should it be like that? Can't we have a regional arrangement?
When you've stayed in a country where everything has come from the center when it comes to power, and you're only just taking the next steps into creating whether it's what you call local or regional systems, then it takes a bit of time. It requires a lot of investment. And I do know, for a fact, I know between June and September, power supply was quite good. And that was because there's been some sizable expansion of the national grid. Now, and then the rains, because the dams are working. The hydro systems are working, so you have more electricity being generated. But of course, we know that this has become the norm. It's seasonal. Waters have gone down, and of course, electricity supply itself has gone down. So it's come back to where it used to be, maybe like 4,000, 3,000, 4,000, rather than the 5,000, sometimes 6,000 that they could take into the system. So what do you require? That decentralization is important. But because you also have to consider the fact that, like I always tell people, there's a social element of electricity, meaning that you and I, as little consumers, should also be able to get electricity to push ourselves out of the lower end of the economic cadre. Otherwise, like you said, I'm either looking for small gens to run my business, which has become more expensive at petrol, on average of 1,100 naira, and so on. So what then happens is, how do you decentralize it in a manner that would help the system work more efficiently? I think more states need to work on their bills to speak about how you can get investment into it, and I'm glad that Lagos State has done that. There was a lot of work that went into that, and I would like to commend them. And they've also worked with the power companies that operate from or within Lagos to have very good feedback on that bill. So it was launched, I think it was last week, and so that has set the pace. And once Lagos set the pace, understand what happens. So how you get your mini grids, how you connect them into the main systems that are managed by the electricity distribution and transmission companies. So that's a bit clearer in Lagos, and then it now has to become clearer. And like I said, since Lagos has passed the bill, what then happens is that all the other states start now to look at it and say, okay, how does it affect my state, and how do we get those investments in? Because you need to start getting those investments in.
And I mean,
that should be...
Yeah, speaking about getting investments in, for you to attract investors, they have to see that this is lucrative. I'm going to get my money back times however much profit they want to make from it. But there have also been concerns about the rising debts within that sector. And any investor that's looking at that is, am I going to come in and then be owed, so much? So, I mean, can you speak to that debt aspect of this investment?
So a significant portion of that debt comes from government institutions. Yeah. And so how do you deal with that? I've always been, and I've always, based on my own knowledge of the power sector, I've always been one who believes that if more people don't get power, you can actually pay for it. And that's how power works. If
more people do not get power, you can actually pay for it.
You can't pay for it.
Okay, you can't.
So this idea of, this is my opinion, this idea of, focusing on band A, what's it called? Individuals can pay for the kind of money you require to manage power. You need large businesses, industries, big corporations who would spend so much money on giving power, so that what then happens is, when the individuals with they have a room and a few points contribute additionally to that. That's one. Then two, in my own opinion, I think the federal government, along with the state governments, need to sit down and work out a system whereby they can invest in ensuring that meters are provided. If you ask me to buy a meter and it's costing as much as, between one phase is about 150, 170,000, three phases is above 200,000, then it would take a lot, especially when you consider the poverty dynamics in Nigeria. So that's one space they need to put money into. Even if you're going to subsidize power, let's start with that. And then once you do that, then it makes it easier to reconnect everybody onto a proper grid. So whether it's off grid that comes onto the main the main grid itself, then you can actually account for every unit of electricity. Because if you cannot, any unit you can account for is lost.
Right.
Yeah, because you can't store it.
Exactly.
So those are things that the federal government, the state governments need to sit down and work with the power companies, work with those who are going to put those investments in, and say, okay, we would give you some level of subsidy into this over a period of time, so that you can get it back through payments in terms of electricity being purchased and so on.
Yeah,
and because it's actually a rental. So why are you asking me to purchase outright for something that really doesn't belong to me? So if I stay there and I buy electricity, it's a rental on that.
Right.
Because meters are not to the individual, but to the house.
To the house, right.
So,
well, I mean, there's a presidential metering initiative that's expected to kick off Q1 next year. They're saying 10 million meters in 5 years.
And 150 million to be invested.
I mean, we'll see how that pans out. But what are your expectations?
But we had that in 2013, 2014, or was it 2015?
Is there a new administration?
Why do we continue to try and reinvent the wheel rather than go and... The map system for me made so much sense. The only challenge, like I said, is you want me to pay for a meter when I don't even get the power. What's the essence? So you must get everybody metered, everybody put on what you call SCADA, which is the system where you monitor everybody on it. And then that way, I can now start to look at how many people are actually consuming electricity and how much electricity are we consuming. Even before now, they will tell you that Nigeria doesn't really require more than 15,000 megawatts of electricity. It could be true.
I mean, it's been said that generation is not necessarily the problem for us.
Well, not necessarily, but of course, generation has its own issues.
Yes, let's come to that. So there are threats of blackouts. The NMDPRA, they are threatening, or they have directed gas producers to halt supply of gas to indebted generation companies, GenCos. And that could obviously lead to a blackout. It's been highlighted that the government is, one of the key debtors to these companies. I mean, what are your thoughts? They've paid a bit of the debt, but it's still above their debt. The government's debt is still above 1 trillion. So, and what are your thoughts on all this?
So you see where we started from when I said a huge chunk of the debt within the power sector is actually from the government. And now, so when you say government in this case, everybody always thinks that it's the federal government. No, it's every one of them.
States.
Federal, states, and local, because they all have ministries and, they have all the MDAs, departments and agencies who consume electricity. And many of them are not paying for it. So how do you want
national
people
cake now?
Wow.
No, that's what some means. That national
cake. But you budget for all these things in your budget. So where does it go to?
Where does that money go to?
And that's something I think governors, the presidents, the ministers need to come back and sit down and decide and say, you know what? Once there's a budget for electricity, once money comes in, we would use that. And that's how it used to be. Because you need to... When NEPA used to be a full government fledged under the Ministry of Power, how do you want the Ministry of Power to generate electricity if all the other ministries who have budgeted for the quantum of electricity that is going to be taken don't push those monies there?
Right.
So now, because it's the private sector, but of course we have someone that, we have the dog that we can call a bad name. Let me put it that way. And in doing that, what then happens is that, these guys haven't invested in it. They just don't give us power. They want us to buy meters. Everybody needs to sit down, like I said. The federal government, now that it has been decentralized, the state governments, you need to decide how you want to meter your electricity generation, transmission, and distribution into the households. Because without those households, no money goes back into the system. So if I'm enjoying free electricity, it's free. But it costs money for the GenCos to put it out, for the transmission people to transmit it, and for the distribution people. So let me give an example. Your transformer gets bad. How do you want them to fix it if you're not paying electricity bills?
Right.
So today when you say, communities put monies together, which is against the law, or against the rules.
Self-governance.
Exactly. And so we need to come back to that. Now, with the gas issue, it's been an issue of pricing. Now, even when the pricing has gone up, federal government will not pay. So if you don't pay the GenCos, so if people don't pay for the electricity, and then the discos don't pay the GenCos and the transmission company, how do you expect the GenCos to now pay for gas.
Right. It's all tied together.
Exactly.
And we want to attract investments into this sector.
We should. We can. I still believe, I don't know when, but I still believe that a number of people in the power sector are going to, going to get huge buyouts from, I don't know where the monies are going to come, because it's a lucrative business. It's just you just need to get the dynamics right.
Let's see how it pans out. Unfortunately, we're not able to take everything, but that was pretty much those two things that pinched us the most last week.
Exactly.
Power and money supply. Money.
And they all go hand in hand.
They go hand in hand.
Because we've spoken about money in power
They go hand in
and the
hand.
money in the hands of the individuals.
Indeed. Let's see what happens this week in the economy, and we'll be back here to give you the lowdown next week.
Thank you for being... Is it my...
Part of the show.
Yeah.
Part of your show.
No, it's your show.
It's our
My
show.
our show.
Yes.
Thanks for being part of our show,
Always
Joanna.
a pleasure. Thank
And
you, Ade.
We'll see you next week.
We will see you next week.